TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Dustin is one of those guys, he's hard to be friends with, but I think that, I'm going to tell Dustin, that I'm his best friend. And I think that he knows that, because Dustin he's just like his old man. I mean, he's moody, he's weird. I mean, he does stuff, he's obnoxious, but I know that about him because I've known his old man, all my life. And it's just, nobody else, he doesn't have very many friends because of that, because of his attitude.
All right.
But it's something, that I overlook it because shit, he's harmless.
What are your memories of working with Steve Austin?
Austin,
and did you see big potential in him too?
Actually, I did, and I believe that the reason that Austin left also was over contract, was over money. But Austin was, he had the long blonde hair, and Austin told me himself, he said, man, there I was in Dallas, I saw you. He said, man, I wanted to be in the wrestling business. Austin said that to me. So, I worked with him, and he had the ability. But when I'm assuming it was the money issue, because, that's so many times since that first change took place with the Road Warriors and Crockett, it was a different ballgame. Yeah. Sting is, I've always, I was working as a heel when I first started working with him. So I never, I can't say never. Later on down the line, I worked babyface and as his partner some. But he's another one of the guys, that you could just feel that had, it's something you can't, you can't put your finger on it, but it's a charisma, and that people, they like him. And and I'm not saying that he lacked ring ability, because he really didn't. He learned as he went along, and he is I'm not going to consider him one of the greatest workers, because Sting is what he is because, I think that he's not comfortable in his skin, as the character that he was, with the blonde flat top and having to work through the crowd. I don't think that he was comfortable with it, so he had to, it was a little, it wasn't grudging or anything, but sometimes it was difficult because and I like him. The answer to the question is that I like him, and I'm sure that that he has the same opinion of me. But I just think that because of when he first started, that he wasn't comfortable with the way that that he had to work, and Flair and I both tried to coax him into like doing the woo to the crowd. He almost hated to do it because he didn't like doing it. But then he learned, he came along, and then he learned, how to work to the people. And then that's how he got over. He's right there with the top names, of guys that have gotten over in the business as far as being, fan favorites.
Right.
There are only a handful of them, and he's one of those guys. Jake is another guy, that he's real crafty. He's smart. He's sharp. He can come up with, quick remarks. And I worked with Jake a lot, and he and I had, which, I've been told, and I really don't ever try to rate my matches, because something that I never did, and a lot of guys do, I never watched my matches back, because when I was learning, I tried to make sure that I did something different in the next match that I work, especially because you're working in Florida. If you go and you have the same match, every week that you're back in that town, people aren't going to come and watch it. But Jake, I would work with Jake down in Florida. I believe it was the first time that I worked with him. It was part of the Sullivan thing,
Right.
The family or the clan that Sullivan had set up. And Jake, was long and lanky. I think Jake is a few years older than I am, but he was learning at the same time I was. But we both had that ability to ad lib. So I mean, I've been told, that some people have watched the matches that we had, and just said that they were, they were good. They couldn't believe that two young guys could go out there and do the stuff just off the cuff, that you can do, because in those days dressing rooms were separate, and you didn't go and sit down with a guy and talk about a match, or you didn't send little note cards or anything to each other. It's like you got in the ring and then you had to work to the people. And then that's how you really decided which way you're going to go in a match. And it's, I think that, that ought to be practiced a little more now, but you have to have the ability.
TitleMatchNetwork.com